All right, peace, power, and love as always, and greeting, and welcome to the big picture. Uh, just wanted to jump on here today, being Friday. Um, hadn't done anything other than this video this week. Want to thank all of my subscribers. I do appreciate your subscriptions. You just don't know how much that means. I had a couple of new subscribers come on board, and I do appreciate that as well. Want to also get you all to share the content, give it the thumbs up, and want to also welcome my ActivateMedia.org family out of Boston, Mass. Been with them for a couple of years now, and appreciate being a part of their radio platform. And you can catch my broadcast on that platform on Fridays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. So I want to jump on here today and talk about Martin Luther King Jr. As you know, we just celebrated his birthday on Monday, and um, y'all know I'm not impressed by what this government does. And by giving him a holiday, that's still not giving us what people like MLK and so many others fought and died for. You know, and we're still to this day begging this rotten system to reparate us. So, as we all know, MLK was a peaceful protester, even under duress, even with dogs being sicked on him, even with police brutality. He still chose to be peaceful in his approach to dealing with the most nonviolent people on the planet. We all know the track record. We all have, studied history at one point in time. We all know the history of the devil and what they do. And I am I'm a thinker that believes in, we don't have to wait on this government to celebrate our heroes and ancestors. And there are several of our ancestors that have passed on and did righteous work while here in the physical form, that deserve to be recognized as well. And so I say that because we become so content with the small things that they give us, and we don't think about the bigger picture. Uh, and MLK was just another black man that this country despised in his physical life, but in his passing, they admired him. And I'm wondering, did they admire that he had passed, or did they actually have admiration for him? And I think that, they admired him in his death, but not in his life. Um, this system, allowed the FBI to become a go-to organization to exterminate and extinguish black minds, voices, and bodies. This Department of Justice that still doesn't recognize the fact that we're being brutalized at a much higher rate by these race soldiers out here, and they still don't step in to do the right thing. And these are the same types of issues that MLK, Malcolm, and Fred Hampton, and so many more, Medgar Evers, Fannie Lou Hamer, Angela Davis, and I could go on and on. But these are the types of things that these brothers and sisters stood and fought against. Uh, excuse me. They stood and fought against this evilness, and the same thing needs to happen now. Uh, Nothing has changed from then to now, all except it may be a little less physical uh, now, but as of the last 10, 12 years, the physicality and brutality has started to uptick. So, like I say, them honoring a man that they despise doesn't impress me, because even in his death, people still hated him. Some people still to this day hate him. They loved his quotes, because his quotes kept us peaceful and docile. Uh, his quotes kept us, instead of hitting them high, hitting them low, we, kept us going higher. It kept us more righteous minded, kept us on a path of turning the other cheek, kept us on the path of doing the right thing, and that in itself was, you know, uh, I'll just say a hell of a stance, because, with all that was going on, there's no way, that today I'm going to turn the other cheek or look the other way or become less vocal, and it took brothers like him and the other forementioned ancestors, uh, and people in the fight to speak out, be vocal, and not be deterred by what they faced. And what they faced was, much more than we deal with today, even though today we still deal with certain issues and certain matters of brutality, mistreatment. The same racism exists and always will, until the people who created it decide to tear it down. Um, but MLK was one of our true leaders, and chose to do things in a more righteous fashion. He didn't preach about an eye for an eye. He didn't preach about getting even. You know, the funny thing, the ironic thing about his life and about the life of so many others, and during his time, Malcolm X, they were so opposite. And then towards the end of their lives, they became more on a level plane, but Malcolm began to think more like Martin, and Martin began to think a lot more like Malcolm. Um, J. Edgar Hoover once said that they'll do everything in their power to prevent the rise of a black messiah, one who can organize and unite the black people, the people. And they did a hell of a job keeping our leaders and those movements suppressed by labeling groups as public enemy number one, by uh, the simple lies that were told on Martin Luther King, saying that he was a communist, you know, and understand that anytime you decide to go against the status quo, you're always going to be labeled as a rebel, as a troublemaker, because you decide to speak your mind and stand up and do what's right, and not do like most of us do and go along to get along. Uh, and like I say, you know, we don't have to wait on them to continue to give us holidays for our heroes and ancestors. We should celebrate Malcolm when May rolls around. We should just take off from work, make it our day. Fannie Lou Hamer's birthday, Medgar Evers' birthday, Fred Hampton's birthday. Those are holidays that we need to start recognizing, because those are our forefathers who fought and died for us to have a somewhat better life that is still non-existent to this day. So, you know, we can't let their deaths be in vain. And you know, like I was saying, people loved Martin, because of his peaceful way of thinking. But they still hated him in his physical life. You know, it was all about the quotes. It was all about him keeping us, like I said earlier, docile, peaceful. So, with that being said, you know, when him and Malcolm met, America was petrified. And I think at that particular time, you know, is when Martin actually started to see things in a different light. Because toward the end of Martin's life, he began to speak more about reparations. He began to speak more about getting our check, going back to Washington to get that check. See, and that was the type of language that got him assassinated. As long as Martin was I'm not even going to say doing it their way, but as long as he was doing it the way he was doing it in the beginning stages, as long as he kept preaching peace, he was fine. You know, like I say, they love his quotes, you know, now. You know, accepting a man by the color of his, not by the color of his skin, but by the content of his character. Now, you know, you have more of them quoting it than us, and they still don't live by that standard. Don't get it twisted. They still don't respect a man because of the content of his character. They're always lumping us together, and they still, to this day, persist to label us as the thug, you know, the violent ones, the rapists, the murderers. You know, all of the characteristics that they possess, all of the characteristics that their forefathers possessed, all of the things that their forefathers did in order to gain control of this country, you know, but they label us with their characteristics. And as long as Malcolm was talking peace, they loved him, you know, because they felt as if he was a alternative to Malcolm. And, you know, they wanted us to be peaceful. They didn't want us to be upset behind inequality. You know, And Malcolm in his later years began to preach more about getting our money, getting what we deserve, getting our reparations, and Malcolm began, to, like I say, take on his characteristics. But Martin began to speak out more vocally about the things that they were doing, such as giving land away in the Midwest like they did, and then blessing those people with the ability to mechanize their farms, tractors and whatever machinery they needed to harvest what they were growing. This is what that government did, and they do the same thing to today. I mean, right now at this moment, they're letting Ukrainians into this country and giving them land and homes and money and allowing them to apply for SSI. These are things that I've spoke on in the past. Allowing them to draw SSI, giving them tax freedom, and in the meanwhile, we suffering. In the meanwhile, Americans are suffering. And see, these are the types of things that we need to, be vocal about. We need to get the spirit of our ancestors, Martin, Malcolm, Fannie Lou Hamer, and all the others. Because it is important that we not continue to be complicit. And complicity, to me, is being silent on the matters that matter. And there's so many things that matter that we're not focused on, and like I say, they loved his quotes. You catch them throwing his quotes around now, but still not living by them, just like the Christianity that they forced on us, that they don't even abide by. And that's the thing about these people that we're dealing with. They don't have any problem enforcing rules, but they fail to follow those rules themselves. So why do we bend over backwards to appease a people who have never taken the time or consideration to do what's right for us? And see, this is what angers me so much in 2024, because a lot of us are in that go along to get along mode. And we don't want to cause problems. We're too busy trying to live like the Joneses. We're too busy trying to emulate them now in 2024. It is nothing that they have done since now up until now. Nothing that they've done different. They've kept everything in place just like they did back in the 1700s. And the abolishment of slavery was only moved to the penal systems. Slavery hadn't went anywhere. And on some real shit, we as free citizens, so-called free citizens, are still living in a slave-driven society. And it shows. It shows because we don't take time for ourselves. We don't make time for that. We're so busy working. Then when you get off work, you still working. And then the ends are not meeting. You're still missing something. You're still lacking something. You're still needing something. Wages are not keeping up with the economy. And these are things that Martin really spoke about. You know, our brothers back then, they really spoke on these indifferences, these inequalities that we're still suffering today. Uh, and what needs to be done, we're not doing it. You know, like Martin said, he was going back to Washington for that check. And see, we need to get more focused on getting our check because we deserve it more than anybody that's in this country. You know, and even back then, just the evilness and hypocrisy of this country. They enslaved people for years and decades. And then upon the so-called Emancipation Proclamation and the freeing of slaves, instead of reparating the people who were oppressed and had nothing, they reparated the slave owners, gave them money that they lost in the freeing of slaves, so-called. And then you fast forward to the 60s, you know, and basically brothers like Martin, MLK, Malcolm, they were fighting for the same things that was happening prior to them. And even today, we're fighting for the same things and against the same things that were happening prior to now. See, America hasn't changed since the days of MLK. And America won't change. You know, and like I was saying, we've got to stop asking permission and start giving permissions. We're allowed to do what we want to do. We're allowed to be who we want to be. We need to focus and concentrate on the unity. The unity that MLK and Martin and Fred Hampton and Medgar Evers and those brothers had back then is the same type of unity that is going to take now in 2024 in order to change anything. Voting hasn't gotten us shit. I'm disappointed in us for running to the polls like we did because Miss Chucks and Pearls was on the ballot. Still under that good for nothing president ain't shit Joe, the same one that wrote the 3 Strikes You Out law. See how quickly we forget those things. So what do you think he's going to do for us? Exactly what he's done, nothing. But we busted our ass going to the polls to vote his ass in, to do nothing for us. They never do anything for us collectively. If they're going to do anything for us, it's for everybody. Understand that. Understand that. They're never going to do, even Kamala Harris said it in the last election. She was like, no, there's nothing that we're going to do specifically for black people. You can Google it. She said it in an interview. I can't say that we're going to do anything specifically, her exact words. And we've already had a black president. How much ground did we gain in those 8 years? So my thing is, why do we continue to participate in a system that doesn't participate in us? And see, this was the type of thinking that Martin had started taking on. You know, even Martin said in an interview that I'm sure everybody saw, clips of, when he said he feels like he integrated us into a burning house. Yes, he did. I'm going to break it down. Honestly, we were doing 100% better during integration as opposed to what happened to us after integration. Because before integration, we had to shop and trade and barter with one another. We were not allowed to go into white restaurants and white grocery stores. So we had to have our own grocery stores, our own restaurants, our own theaters, our own hospitals. And we saw this happening and prospering in the early 1900s, late 1800s into the early 1900s. Really, right after our so-called emancipation, we started seeing several thriving communities popping up into existence. I was watching a documentary earlier and it was speaking about a few of the black cities that were, race rioted and that were terrorized. There's a difference between it being a riot and a domestic act of terrorism. And they made sure to get the language the way it was supposed to be back then. They would call it a riot so people would think that it was those niggas. But in all reality, it was an act, all of those were acts of domestic terrorism because white people didn't want black people to possess anything, no matter how hard they worked for it. They had that old saying, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, boy. And then when you do that, what do? What they do best: come and rob and loot it and take possession of it, rape and pillage and take. That's all they've ever done. That's all they have ever done. Show me one time in history where we've done that. And every leader that we've ever had, from Martin to Fred Hampton, they never spoke violence. They spoke self-defense. All except for Martin. Martin never even spoke or taught self-defense. Martin taught turn the other cheek. But other leaders said no, defend yourself. And I agree with that. Only a fool would not defend himself and allow himself to be genocided. So there were several approaches, there were several different methods, but even in a peaceful method, America didn't appreciate it. America has never appreciated true peace, and America has never lived in true peace. Even when they had us in chains during slavery, America was still not a peaceful place. Ever since America's inception, it has been at war, even at war with itself. And a lot of people, have the misconception that slavery, the Civil War was fought over slavery. No, the Civil War was fought over the North's envy of the South's wealth and free labor that they were able to capitalize on. Nothing more, nothing less. And if you don't believe me, do your research. Abraham Lincoln didn't give a damn about no slaves. He was more concerned about keeping this shabby ass country together. But yet and still, they fought a civil war. See, and that's what greed will do to you. And thirst for power will do to you. And that's something that they have always had. Greed and a thirst for power. And that's all that they have contributed to society. It's chaos. And then those that came along that wanted to erect change were assassinated. That is not what America was built on. It's not the American way. Peace is not the American way. Peace is the way of certain individuals and certain groups of people. But peace is not the American way. Never has been. Never will be. And, Not only did they assassinate Martin and silence one of our most powerful leaders, they also assassinated his mom. And I didn't know this until, maybe 10 years ago. And I was doing some reading and researching and ran across a story, and I'm like, what? So I read it, yeah, they even assassinated his mother. Wasn't enough that they got him. And you can't tell me that the individual, the way that shooting in that church happened, that individual wasn't a plant. Understand that if this government cannot get close enough to you, it will offer somebody who can enough to do it. And that's where our integrity and morality has to kick in, has to step in. We got to be like Malcolm, Martin, have some integrity, some morals, some values, and stand up for what's right. Plain and simple. Just standing up for what's right and doing the right thing. And we need to reclaim our culture and we need to get back to doing things the way they were done in the days of Martin and Malcolm. There was more unity. People understood the issues more. People are so dumbed down nowadays by these social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, X, this metaverse, all of this mess. And it's time for us to pull ourselves away from their system. It's time for us to separate ourselves from their system. I was listening to a brother that I follow, Urema Karama, and peace and shout out to him, because he spit on it yesterday. And it's about separating ourselves. America has a great price to pay. America's karma is going to be 10 times worse than any karma that we've seen. Everybody reaps what they sow. I've done some reaping. And I was telling my mom a few weeks ago, I hope I'm, done paid all my karma. And I'm not trying to make any new karma, but some people's mentality is, because of their power construct in the physical life, don't care about that. It's about having things the way they want them while they are here. And why do we have to wait to die to be in peace? Why can't we live in peace? I want you all to think about that, because we're so quick to say, RIP. Now they ain't got to worry about this and that. Well, we don't have to worry about it in life if we do the right thing and do what we're supposed to do, as far as uniting, starting a collective movement, staying on code with that movement. Because, see, those are the things. We come together for all of these situations that we have come together for over the last few years. We come together for Tamir Rice. We come together for Trayvon Martin. We come together for Sandra Bland. We come together for Botham Jean. We come together for George Floyd. But we don't stay together on shit. And that's what keeps killing us. Our inability to stay together, stay united. Like I always say, I know 4, 5, 6, 7 individuals, strong individuals, but when we come together, that makes it power. This gives it power. See, our individuality, it's time to put all that on the back burner. Like I've said so many times, I'm about a Black First movement. All that other old homosexuality and all that other old Christian denominational mess, all that other stuff, I don't partake in all that. I'm about Black first. You make choices to be Baptist. You make a choice to be homosexual. You make a choice to be Pentecostal, Catholic, or whatever, but you're born black. You didn't have a choice in that matter. So that should be our movement. But we have let society keep us divided, and we haven't been able to accomplish much of anything since the 60s, early 70s. And there's a tide. The tide is turning. And we need to stay in that momentous flow that's happening right now. We need to take full advantage of it. And it may not be happening as fast as we want it, but it can happen as fast as we make it happen. That's what we got to understand. We keep begging them for reparations. We can actually reparate each other. We keep begging them for equality. We can actually be equal with one another. We keep begging them for peace. We can actually be peaceful with one another. See, these are the things, some things we don't need for anything. We've never needed anybody for nothing. Nothing. But people have always needed us. And people have gotten million, billion, trillionaire rich off the blood and sweat and tears of our physical labor, mental labor, and all else. We created most of the inventions that are used every day in this country. It wouldn't be no internet without a black man. Wouldn't be no cell phones without a black man. Wouldn't be no heat without a black woman. Wouldn't be no lights without a black man. So we are responsible for so many things that we never reap the benefits of. And yet and still, this country has the audacity to tell us right to our faces that we don't have any money for reparations. Remember, that's what Joe Biden said. Seeing Martin was focusing on getting that check. We need to refocus on getting that check. But in the meanwhile, by simply working together, we can start to reparate ourselves and pull ourselves out of this bucket and stop pulling each other down back in the bucket. And that happens more than it should. That's one thing that this generation has yet to understand, that the generation prior to us had down to a T. Let me go on and throw it in, because I say this every show. We have not recognized that we need each other. We need each other. We ain't never needed nobody but each other. And when we can understand that and get back to that thinking, we can start to progress forward once again. Because at this particular moment in time, we're stagnant. We're here. We're not moving forward like we should be. We're not building together like we should be. We're not practicing group economics like we should be. See, and like I say, we don't have to wait on them. We can put our funds together. We can buy land. We can recreate Black Wall Street. We can recreate Ocoee, Florida, Rosewood, Florida, Slocum, Texas, Elaine, Arkansas. We can recreate Tulsa, Oklahoma. We can recreate all of these communities. We have to reclaim our culture, reclaim ourselves, and build on collectivism, being collective in thought, being collective in movement, being collective in progression. See, we have to stay on code just like they do. They stay on code. We dodge it. And we have got to get back on code and start taking care of one another like we used to do. Because like I said, we need each other. We all we got. We all we need. We ain't never needed no help from nobody because we are the inventors of taking nothing and turning it into something. Look at what our ancestors did when they were so-called freed. And 100 years later, look at the progress that was made off the backs of those after 1865 and what they were putting together. People were staying on code. People were building their own communities. We were building our own hospitals, our own schools, our own everything. Our own fire departments, our own police departments. Our people were putting these things together and in place. And this is what we need to get back to. This is what we need to focus on. We need to really create the dream. We need to create the dream that Martin never saw happen. We need to create the dream that Malcolm never saw happen. We need to create the dream that Medgar, Fred, Fannie Lou, and so many others fought and died for, but never got to see. That's what it's time to get back to. Getting your mind right. Getting your mind right will get our time right. That simple. It's that simple. Because see, it's effortless to take ourselves out of this system, to remove ourselves out of this system. MLK, one of the great foreseers, and understood the pressure that a boycott would cause. He understood what fed the monster, what fed this economy, capitalist. He understood the capitalist mentality and took 381 days, one of the best examples that we have ever saw. That was effortless. All it took was them working together, because it worked, because not some of them, not half of them, but all of them participated in the boycott and worked together to get each other to and from work, to and from school, to and from wherever. They carpooled, they walked together, but they stayed off of those buses because they understood that if they stayed off of the buses long enough, somebody was going to listen, because somebody's pockets were going to start hurting. And see, this is what we have got to take from what Martin left us. The boycott and its effectiveness. And you say boycott now, oh, shoot, I ain't finna stop going to Walmart for no. I ain't finna stop watching. See, I just started back watching football this year. I watched a few games because after they did what they did to Cap in 2016, 2017, I was done with football. I was done with basketball, all of that, for 7 years. And see, just imagine if half of us, just half of us, had really taken that personal and stopped watching the NFL for just 1 year, for just 1 year. Take that off of your menu. See, we are not willing to sacrifice nowadays. We're not willing to push away the things that we really don't need The things that are really not benefiting us, we're not willing to sacrifice that. We're not willing to push that away. What is the NFL doing for us? What is the NBA doing for us? What is Walmart doing for us? What is Target doing for us? Oh, Target, they got some all black products now. All black. So what? That's because they know how to. It's a video on YouTube, how to sell to the Negro. It's on YouTube. Google that. You will be amazed. It looks like it was made back in maybe the 60s, 50s. But you would be amazed at the planning that they do. They do just to pull us in. Like Martin said, excuse me. He integrated us into a burning house. We were so much better doing segregation. We had to be, because we had to depend on one another during segregation. We had to spend our money with one another during segregation. And that's why I say I'm all for this new movement that they got going. You know, the new segregation that they got going. I'm all for that, because nobody can coexist with them. Hell, they can't even coexist with each other without some type of conflict taking place, some type of conflict rising up. They've had one civil war, and they're going to have another one. Mark my words, because those type of people thirst for power. Those types of people live off of greed. They have it all, but yet and still they want more and more. And they don't want anybody else to be able to partake of that. I was listening to a brother last night, Papa Duck. Shout out to Papa Duck for pointing out, making a video and pointing out what Orlando Brown said. And a lot of people say he's crazy, but he's not. You know, and just like fruit, vegetables and things, they don't even like you catching rainwater. They don't like you growing food. I can remember growing up, and yeah, like Papa Duck said, and I could wholeheartedly feel him, because I can remember when I was a little boy, before my teenage years, and growing up in East Texas. Like, hell, my grandmother had a big plum tree next to her house, had a berry tree in the backyard, had another plum tree in the backyard. There were peach trees, pear trees, in the neighborhood back then. But you don't see those things now. Persimmon trees, things like that were just growing naturally. And now this country has taken full control of that and sell you everything. Before long, they're going to be selling you air. Water that falls from the sky freely. They charge you for it. And that's what people like Martin were fighting against. He started to realize in his last days the mistake that he made. And hey, there is nothing wrong with admitting your mistakes. Recognizing them is what matters. And he recognized that. We were better off during segregation. So keep on with the gentrification movement. I'm all for the gentrification movement, because we'll thrive. We have always lived in struggle mode. So if it's one thing that we know how to do, is struggle. And not only struggle, but survive. But we're going to have to start working together in order to survive. Mark my words, we need each other. And as time continues to move forward, we're going to start to see day by day, more and more, just how much we need each other. We're going to have to go back to the village. We're going to have to rebuild the village. This is why I say it's time to reclaim our culture and do what's right for us. I'm not worried about what nobody else is going through at this particular moment in time. I'm concerned about us because we don't have nothing and we live within a system that is not going to give us anything beneficial. So let's take control of ourselves. Let's not let our ancestors have died in vain. Let's rebuild the dream. Let's build the dream that Martin had. Let's do that. Let's not just talk about it. Let's really be about it. It's time for us to, wherever you at in this country, with technology, we can link up. This is my purpose. This is my purpose here. I'm trying to link up like-minded brothers. I was talking to Papa Duck earlier. Just so happened he texted me. And we conversed this morning. Solid brother. And he's younger than I. Solid young brother who recognizes and understands what we're up against. The things that we really truly need to be doing that we're not focusing on. So let's get on that. Let's build a dream. Let's make MLK happy. He couldn't be happy in life, fully happy in life. Let's give him his just desserts. Let's get back to working on what him, Medgar, Malcolm, Fannie Lou, Fred, and all those others were fighting for. Let's get back on there because the fight ain't over. The fight has not even begun on our end. And I've said this several times. If we do what we need to do for one another, the fight won't last long and it won't be painful. Because if we start focusing on us, everything else will be irrelevant. And when we focus on us, the things that we need to happen will happen. Nothing will get in the way. We are masters of it all. Everything that we do, we master. Remember where you come from. You come from the resilient ones, the resilient bloodlines. Because in order for you to still be here today, your ancestors had to be some geniuses, resilient people. Understand that. You're not here for nothing. You're here because of somebody sacrificing for you. And if you're not willing to make that same sacrifice for those after us, you ain't have no purpose. You don't have a purpose. And I've been on here longer than I intended. But I want y'all to understand, hey, I'm just another brother. But I'm a concerned brother. And I want y'all to understand this. We need each other. And I'm going to leave y'all with that. Like I always say in close, I want to appreciate those of you who took the time out to listen. I thank you for that. I love you for that. Y'all want to take the time out to thank my ActivateMedia.org family who listens to my shows every Friday. I appreciate that. I thank y'all as well. And like I always say in closing, let's plan, organize, and unify because we all have a key right here and right here. I love y'all. I'm out. Peace, power, and love.